Fitzpatrick, and I was born in Lansing, Michigan in 1932, and had always thought that I'd be interested in a military life. Well, a little later down the road, you'll find out that I did do that.
All right, tell us how you got into the military.
Okay, first of all, I joined this unit of National Guard in Adrian, Michigan. Now, I was raised in Lansing, Ann Arbor, and a couple of others because my father was a civil engineer and he moved around a lot. So I joined that National Guard unit and got on active duty with them for 2 years.
Okay.
I joined the National Guard in 1947, September, because we just got back from summer camp, and that gave me enough time to get oriented to the unit because I had taken a full-time job working there in the armory. From there I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, to the 10th Mountain Division, Company C of the 85th Infantry Regiment. I did basic training. I did the second 8, which was individual training, and I ended up going through leadership school, truck driver maintenance course. I graduated honor student from there, and I was sent on TDY to the 5th Army Transportation Company 505 in Chicago. And then we drove from there to Fort Wainwright, Alaska. We drove down the highway once a month for 3 months. After that, I was reassigned to the C Company, the 85th Infantry Regiment, and gave basic training to new trainees.
Just one moment. Go ahead.
Yes, when we finished basic training for the cycle that was current, I was sent with them, 44 people, to Japan, where we all joined the 7th Infantry Division. I was a PFC at the time, and I was reassigned as a rifleman in a rifle company in Camp Fuji, Ama, Japan. That's where, if you have never been there or have not seen it, it is an active volcano, which is quite a huge thing. We'd spend days trying to get up it, and then they would slide right back down and all that stuff that we were rolling around in. But our primary concern there was to train as amphib landing specialists, which we all ended up doing with the landing at Inchon in Korea in September of '50. When the light's on, it's on. I was in Fox Company's 17th Infantry Regiment, which was a newly refill organization because they had been sort of in semi-retirement there in Japan. They moved down from Sendai, and we joined them in Camp Fujiyama in Tent City.
Do you want a drink of water? Do you want to stop and get a drink? You okay? Tell what happened after that.
After that, we spent 2 months training, August and July and part of August, on amphibious landings. We knew what we were doing because there's just no place else they use those big, heavy, long ropes. Well, after we trained, they got us ready, POR qualified, so to speak, to make this landing at Inchon. We were quite unaware of where we were going or what we were doing until we woke up one morning in Pusan Harbor, South Korea. Well, you could hear the guns from the artillery, mortars, rockets, whatever. we were in no danger in the harbor, but once you got out of the harbor, that's when you ran into things. But we spent probably a week or 10 days on detail in that harbor, moving supplies and equipment and so forth.
What happened after Pusan? Where'd you go from Pusan?
Pusan, we got back onto the boat and went around to Inchon.
By the way, do you remember the name of the boat you were on? No. Okay, good.
It's just a victory ship.
Right.
We got up there and we waited 2 or 3 more days, and we were explained to us that we had to wait for the tide to change. And the tide had not changed. We would be going in anyway in flat bottom boats.
Can you describe what you saw at Inchon when you arrived? Was there a battle going on? Can you
Yes, there
describe
was
that?
artillery
Okay.
fire.
Wait till hesitate before I finish so I don't get my voice. Okay, give me that now again.
Yes, when we got to Inchon, we could hear the artillery firing. We could hear small arms fire periodically. Machine guns, aircraft were coming in over our heads. They did not bother us at all.
Go ahead.
When we were on board ship, we were in underneath the, we'll call it a blanket of overhead fire. The battleship Missouri firing her 16-inch guns miles inland from where we were sitting, but that sounded like a whole outfit going over your head.
Now, at some point you get on the LSTs, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that now.
So we got down to the point where it was time for us to debark, and we got our weapons, our packs, all of our equipment, and we lined up by number along the side of the ship. And then at one point somebody said, "Disembark." So what happened was we went down the side of the ship on this rope ladder. It was a huge rope ladder. Go down 10 or 12 of us wide. Got into these little boats down at the bottom, and once they were loaded, the Navy person told us to go ahead and squat down. It might get a little rough where we were going. So we squatted down, and near as I can remember, we took no casualties while riding in the boat or debarking from the landing craft itself.
Go ahead.
I think basically most of us had thoughts on the movies that we had seen, and guys dropping like flies outside the boat when the ramp came down. And I guess I was kind of thinking about that too, because when the ramp went down, it was just like a whole new world opening up. It's a different view of everything. You got people laying around, you got wounded, you got dead, and there's all sorts of folks around. And somebody is always pushing us in towards the beach. Well, the beach was kind of mucky because the tide was still out, and it was kind of, I guess you'd have to be in Korea to get the odors and the atmosphere of the place, because it was hotter than daylight there. I think it was somewhere in the vicinity of 15th of September that this took place, and the Marines had gone in on our flank the day before. Well, we still ran into a bunch of snipers in the rail yards. We were in the area near the rail yards, and our platoon leader was a young individual that probably had just been out of school not long, but our platoon sergeant, Sergeant Cardabone, kind of got things organized, and we found our way into some of these buildings along the edge of the railroad. I guess they call it a yard, rail yard.
Good.
There was slow, sporadic firing going on from the rail yards, and what we call Yongdong-po on up to the city of Seoul. Well, we made it up towards the city of Seoul by late afternoon, and we were on top of a small mountain. We had defenses set up there by the rest of the 17th, and we moved through them down into this compound where they had a religious organization set up. I remember that very well because I had to get into the chapel, or whatever they called it over there, and try to keep from tearing it up. We got all the way through the building, but had to slow down because the time was being consumed, of course, and about the same time incoming artillery sounded like 2 rail trains coming down the road at us. And that morning when we jumped off, we were sent down over a hill where there was more than 120 bodies, at which we had to punch each one with our bayonet to see if it was still alive or if it was dead. And I say it because in their state of being, that they just weren't anybody. So
Pick it up now. Go ahead, Tom.
okay, we got down to the bottom of the hill and we started into this compound which had a wooden mud glass type of fencing, which you reach up and grab a hold of the top of that glass and you were cut. That's just the way that it was formed. We got in there, myself and 2 others. I was a BAR gunner, and we moved on towards away from the chapel, and about that time I saw a group of people down in the houses to our left flank. So without hesitation, I started firing rifle grenades down at them. Nobody had told us what to do, and I turned around and looked, and there was one of my buddies sitting up against a tree in the compound with a hole for a 3rd eye between his other eyes. And I can always remember that because that's one thing he had told us on the boat, that was when he got it, it was going to be in the head. So lo and behold, it sure was.
Go ahead.
I don't know his last name, but his first name, correction, I do know his last name. It was Dunsworth. And we used to go by nicknames over there, so first name wouldn't mean anything to anybody.
Did he have a nickname?
Did I?
Did he have a nickname?
Yeah.
Give me his nickname and give me your nickname.
Dunsworth was called Baldy or Chrome Dome because he had his head shaved. My nickname was Little Black-Headed Piss Pot. So, spicy little black-headed piss pot. So we moved from there out into the valley, and just about that time, a whole volley of 4.2 mortars came in. It was a misfire or misjudgment on somebody's account, and they got right in the middle of us.
So it was friendly fire.
Yes.
Give me that. You give me those words.
Yeah, it was a very important friendly fire situation because we didn't really know where it came from. We thought the enemy had suddenly found all these weapons, but no, it was some of our own fell short on us. It took quite a few casualties, none that I'm personally aware of, but there were quite a few that were cut up down in there. Somehow or another that stopped our movement for the day, and we set up for positions of security for nighttime. And I think it was very quiet that night. Scary, everything out there seemed black. People were wearing white clothes, looked like they were wearing black clothes, and so forth. It was just a scary situation because we didn't know what to expect overnight. But the next morning, after we had chowed down, we had a hot meal the next morning, and we moved on in to our particular areas inside the city of Seoul. Ours was to go down the main street of Seoul, and we were confronted with a couple of Marine tanks coming around the corner. And then we moved north of Seoul to a big area where they had a racetrack. And we assembled on that racetrack, and then we, as far as I know, we just moved back into the city of Seoul or into a position where we came back into the city.
Were you meeting any resistance in Seoul?
Very little.
Just give me that in a sentence. There was very little.
Okay, we had sporadic type of small arms fire from different people. I would imagine they were people that got lost from their units, or there weren't many of them, and they were not consistent in what they were doing. So we moved on out of the city.
Okay, now tell us about your route north as you started moving north. Tell us about what it was like moving north from Seoul.
North from
wait a
Seoul.
minute. Excuse me 1 second. Go ahead.
Okay, we moved through Seoul northward towards a large hill which appeared to be sitting out in the middle of all these rice paddies. Well, now there's where the resistance got a little bit heavier. Every time we'd move, they would fire on us with heavy machine guns. From there, we had a consultation with the South Koreans who wouldn't move when they were told to move. Consequently, our fire was kind of masked by their being there, and things sort of settled down. I remember that the chaplain came out on the side of the road and gave us all a prayer, and we gathered in a group and was waiting for the next move. But in the meantime, we had found out that we had a young man that was hit in the head. His name was Blackwood, and I believe he was from North Carolina. I thought he was a goner, so I picked him up and laid him up on the bank of the rice paddy and stuck his rifle into the ground like you normally do for identity of a wounded. From there, we went and went towards the hill. We did not take the hill. The Koreans were forced up the hill by the 17th Regiment. And the Koreans actually crowned the top when the last that I can remember about it. Then we moved back into the place where they picked us up in trucks and took us back onto a boat.
Did they? Go ahead.
So we did go out to the harbor again and picked up a boat, the same type of boat that we had when we came up there. But one thing changed. The type of boat changed from an LSU to an LST, which means you get your tanks, your trucks, your jeeps, all your people on one boat, and it's a flat bottom sucker that slapped the water like a like a water ski. We went all the way back past Pusan, up the other coast where we had not been, and rode that thing all the way up there. And on the 29th of October, we got off again and very glad to get off. That thing was a seasick baby. We had spent probably 4 or 5 days on that boat trip that time, and we were all pretty seasick to begin with. And when we got up to North Korea, we landed at Iwon.
Can you describe what it was like at Iwon when you were landing?
Well, yes, I can tell you a little bit about Iwon. I remember that somebody was there just a slight bit ahead of us, like they were at Inchon. Not sure who it was or anything. And then we waited around there and moved slowly up the road north. We went up the road north for a couple of days, and then somebody moved through our column and they went north. We followed them as I guess it was just a rest area move.
Tell us how you walked.
It was quite common to walk where you were going because you weren't sure of the enemy's situation, your situation, or just what was going on. So we walked with our eyes and our minds constantly on the enemy, as I'm sure theirs was on ours.
Did you meet any resistance along the way on the road?
We got no resistance when we were leading, and when unit moved through us, it was my understanding that there was no casualties in that until we reached a river.
Go ahead.
We leapfrogged or jumped all the way up that highway until it was time to make an assault up this one hill, which was on the far bank of the Inchon River, we think.
Just continue, I'm sorry.
Okay, as we were told that we were going to jump off at a certain time, and we did so. We made it across by the luck of the Irish, so to speak, with very little dampness. A lot of the guys fell in the ice because they opened a reservoir north of that place, and the water came down and made it about 3 feet deep.
About that. And tell us about the gear you were wearing.
Okay, we were all dressed in our combat uniforms. The heaviest piece of clothing we had was a field jacket. And being a BAR gunner, I got a little bit warmer because I had a heavier load. I think that we tried to cross that river. It was, from what I understood from the report, about 7 degrees below zero. And the further north we went, the colder it got. We did make our objective on top of that hill. The 2nd Battalion made its objective there. We had to move from there further north towards the Yalu River. We made it all the way to the Yalu River, and I understand others got credit for it, but that's beside the point. I know what I did and where I was and when I did it. I think that...
What was it like at the Yalu? What did you see when you hit the Yalu River?
Snow and ice.
Give me
Yeah. When we got to the Yalu River, there was a huge white valley which housed the Yalu River. I can't remember the Hyzin or Hyjidzen.
Heisingen.
Yeah.
Heisingen.
Was the name of the city.
Give it your words. Heisingen was the name of the city.
Hyzingen was the name of the river.
Not the river, the town. You said Heisingen. The river was the Yalu. Heisingen was the name of the town.
Okay.
Yeah, give me that again.
Okay, when we got to the Yalu River, there was nothing but a big open valley. and it sloped down from both sides to this river, which is the Yalu River. And it bordered Hysogen, the town to the right flank of our right flank. And by this time, I'm sure it was well below zero, like 25 or 30 degrees below. And we were still dressed in these fatigues, combat boots, and a lot of nerve. That's about the best I can say for it. We had a few firefights. The enemy stood up on the hills across the valley. We stood up on our hills. And we finally got permission from the commander to build fires, because it appeared that they weren't coming after us, and we knew we weren't going after them.
Tell me what you could see. Could you see? Those were Chinese that were there.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what you see? Describe what you saw on the other hills.
You can imagine how many people were there and what they were doing. Well, they were a show of force from the Chinese army to let us know they were there. Nobody fired at anybody. Nobody had any artillery or anything else. And we noticed that there was a glare of fire in the sky over behind the hills that they stood on. Next morning we got up, same thing. They were standing up on their mountaintop and we were standing on ours.
Go ahead.
Well, we thought that the prophecy of us being home by Christmas was upon us. We thought that General Doug would get us out of there and get us on home, because the word was around that he would have everybody out of there by Christmas time. That didn't happen, and the Chinese counterattacked.
Well, did you celebrate Thanksgiving up there?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. You were there on Thanksgiving Day, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah, it was, yeah.
Thanksgiving was pretty slim. They boast upon the amount of stuff that we got by airdrop. And what the airdrop concerned us most was the ammunition, because everything was dropped by color. Aqua color was water, yellow was something else, and ammunition was always red. So we were after the red parachutes. And we got resupplied on ammunition, and the weapon that I had fired quite a bit of ammunition and consequently needed more people to carry it around. I had an American and 2 South Korean ammo bearers to keep that weapon going. When we started our movement out of there, after we had our meal and everything, the next morning the Chinese were going to give us a Thanksgiving present and come right back down that river after us. So consequently, they did, in fact, run us off that hill. We moved as quickly.
You were there. Tell me about that.
Okay, when the Chinese first entered this fray, they knew they were in command up there in their own country, so we were pretty cautious of what they were doing. But the next morning when we got ready to move, we could hear these sounds, trumpets, maybe they were some other horns, but anyhow, they had trumpets, pans, tin cans, and everything else that they were beating on. And that was not the first time that we had seen all that, but this time it really meant that the big boys were coming. So we went from there down to, I'm trying to think of whether it was Hung Nam or Ham Hung.
Hung Nam. It was Hung Nam. Ham Hung was right when you came at the E1, but Hung Nam was going back.
Well, there's 2 of them.
Yeah, I know this. I know that.
2 cities.
Right.
But anyway, we went down towards there. It was quite a trip of about 3 or 4 days We did some riding on the rails, and we took whatever was available, such as wagons with oxen pulling them and so forth to haul our dead and wounded.
Go ahead.
We were all in a state of confused minds. The retreat itself is enough to say you didn't get your job done. We did get our job done. And I personally felt like somebody was riding on my back, raising hell, trying to find a way to get to me. And I constantly looked back. I slept very little at night. And of course there was, unless you rode the dead wagon, you didn't get a chance to lay down. But we made it back to Ham Hung, where we had set up a defensive posture around the city, which was up on mountaintop again. Still very cool. It was not as cold as was before, but we had never gotten warm from that other one. However, we moved from there down to the harbor. After a day or two, we were relieved by I think it was, I know it was 3rd Division, I think it was the 65th Regiment, but they took our positions. We were told not to talk to them or discuss any of it, which we did not. And we moved out. It was close to midnight. We started down the trails to get back to the road that would take us down to the harbor. We kept a pretty tight group, and we didn't hear or see from a lot of people again at that point. For an example, Lieutenant Cardamone, who had gotten his field commission on this trip, was missing from the formation. I don't remember seeing Captain Snyder, but I do know that both of them made it through there later. And at this point, I was more concerned at doing what I was told to get on that boat. They had some huge fires burning down there on this beachhead. And everything that wasn't a weapon or ammunition you were supposed to throw in the appropriate pile to get rid of it so that nobody could use it. We did that. And then most of us just fell asleep that afternoon, sitting on the beach, or not on the beach, on the boat, and just soaking up the sun, if there was any. And we went all the way back to Pusan from there.
Do you remember what the date was when you got back to Pusan? Was it in December or January?
December.
Okay. If you don't, it's okay. What happened when you got to Pusan?
Pusan, we were resupplied with people, supplies, and equipment, weaponry, and we started off performing our infantry trait of clearing out the hills on both sides of the MSR. The MSR being the main supply route. It was supposed to be kept open, and we were chosen for that duty. I remember 2 or 3 different incidences where it got a little bit tight, a little bit tough. But again, we had come through just like it's supposed to. Then in April, first part of April, I had been slightly wounded by a wound that was not life-threatening or didn't do any real harm. And the doctor told me that we weren't getting a ride out of there. So you might just as well make up your mind to get back to your unit. And
How did it happen? Tell us how you said you got a slight wound. What happened?
well, we were going up this mountain, and the enemy started opening fire from up on top. Well, my platoon leader told me at that time to get in a firing position to cover us from the left flank, which I have always done. That was part of my job. And I got up on the left flank and immediately opened fire towards them, and they opened fire towards us. Well, we were in a graveyard, and graveyards are mounds over there. People are buried setting up. Anyway, my one leg fell outside the boundary of that grave, and it just got grazed with a bullet from his machine gun.
Go ahead.
Second trip north from Pusan to the interior supply routes were needed to be cleaned out. Consequently, being an infantry squad and platoon, we started cleaning them out. We'd go up the mountains, up the sides, of left or right. Each day it may change. Where necessary, you'd call for support, and if you didn't need any support, you just go ahead and go on up the mountains until something happens that makes you think that there might be some enemy there. We were very fortunate for a few days, and we didn't pick up on any until I can't remember exact dates, but
We were starting to talk about April 51. What happened in April 51?
I went home.
Oh, okay. Well, let's not talk about that yet. Tell us a little bit more. Were there any Katusas in your unit? In your
Yes.
squad? Talk about the Katusas. You had a couple of ammo bearers that were Katusas, right?
Yes.
Go ahead. Talk about that.
I had in my platoon at that time, and I don't know who the platoon sergeant was, the new platoon sergeant was, or the platoon leader. But I had 2 ammo bearers, and each of us had been issued a Katusa in Japan, which we carried with us every place we went. And mine I used as ammo bearers, and I looked after them just like they were mine. And I'd pull up on a hill, start to shoot. Of course, they knew then that one of them better get ready to move because I was going to need some more ammo.
Go ahead.
Is this going to be inserted someplace?
Tell us about that incident.
Our platoon leader was named Louis Cardamone.
Go ahead.
My platoon leader's name was Louis Cardamone. He was a platoon leader with a battlefield commission. He had been the platoon sergeant previous to that. He was tough, but he was fair. Cardamone was out on this hill as we were setting in position, getting ready to take some more property. I don't remember. But anyway, Cardamone was with the 2nd and 3rd squads of the platoon, and I was the squad leader appointed by Cardamone at that point. This is around 20 November 18, 1920. Could have even been as far back as the 15th. But he took command of those troops and kept them moving and kept them firing. You hear a lot about people that say that everybody doesn't fire their weapon in combat. This is true. Really true. More so than we'd want to believe. And he was awarded the Silver Star and his battlefield commission at the same time. This was at a regimental awards ceremony, which we were not privileged to be at.
About that.
Lieutenant Cardamone had been a very good leader, and he kept busy. The fact that he had been awarded the Bronze Star with a Valor device, 2 or 3 Purple Hearts. The Purple Hearts were awarded to him when nobody even knew he had been hit until later that month. And when he went to the ceremony to get his battlefield commission and his Silver Star presented, we didn't know what he was going to get there, but word got back before he did that he had been awarded these items.
Tell me what you saw, what he was doing that day. Not when he got the citation, but when the reason that he got the citation, what you could see him doing.
I saw him personally going around jacking people up, getting them up on line, making sure they had their weapons and that they were operative. And about every so often, they'd get a few rounds in, and Cardamone would have to get out of that posture and into another, and then start all over again, pushing people up to their firing positions.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was informed by Mr. Serpa, our unit administrator, that I was going to be going out the next day for rotation back to the United States. And boy, I was the happiest one man you've ever seen. I reappointed another person, my replacement with a BAR, and I grabbed what little bit of equipment that I had and moved back down the hill to an area where we had a tent set up for all rotatees. This was the first part of April of 1951, and I knew I had to get back to the States. I didn't know how long it would take me, but I knew I had to get back. For you see that we had been extended for a year. No discharges were issued for a year.
Go ahead.
All right, I spent 3 tours in Korea, 1 in Vietnam, and the rest of it was peacetime stateside business. I wasn't much of a person to complain because I was, at this time, had over 20 years, and I was fixing to put my papers in to retire. I did so.
Tell us what your rank was when you retired.
I retired as a Command Sergeant Major E9 with more than 20 years service.
And what unit were you in when you retired?
I was the Post Sergeant Major of Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Can you tell us what citations you got in the years you were in the military?
Numerous citations.
Give me a sentence.
Meritorious
Give it a
service.
sentence. I received such and such, such good.
I received these awards. I received many citations and or letters of appreciation in the time that I was in the service. And when I retired, I had enough awards that I couldn't hardly get them on a plain cloth shirt.
Did you have any regrets about being in the military? Do you have any regrets about being in the military?
No,
Give me that.
I waited around for a long time after that retirement, hoping that they'd call me back. Every time there was a little scrape, I'd say, God, I ought to be there. No, I have no regrets for this at all. Of my over 20 years, I feel, with credentials to prove it, that I had a very decent tour of duty.
Now, did you ever go back to Korea again after your tours of duty there? You never went back to visit, did you?
Oh, no. I didn't lose anything over there.
Okay. Did you ever go to the Korean War Memorial in Washington?
No, but I have pictures of it.
Uh-huh.
The Park Service sent me pictures.
Do you have anything else you want to say, Tom, that I might not have asked you about?
I can't regret anything. my wife of 56 years, and no, that's wrong, 54 years, and I raised 4 nice young men. Only 1 or 2 of them decided to try this service, but we're real proud of them, and each and every one of them are raising their own families now.
Now, you never told me this. You said you came from Michigan. Tell us where you live now. I live now in, yeah, and how long you've lived here.
Right now I live in Kernersville, North Carolina. I've been here over 20 years since I retired. In fact, I moved here in '74. And I moved here with a chance for a better employment.
What did you do when you get out?
I was a traffic manager in a steel factory, shipping fabricated buildings. And before that, for about 7 years, I spent time in a high school teaching junior ROTC to military age group people. Some of those students in the high school get pretty old while they're hanging around. But yes, I taught ROTC, and the first 2 years that I taught it, we had the most outstanding unit in the system.